remember, at the end of the day, they can copy a lot, right? They can even copy how we might work on a particular platform. The thing they can't copy is the relationship that we build with the audience. Now, the second kind of technique I want to talk about, and I'll jump into, is what I call the virtual walkthrough. Some of you guys have actually seen this on a YouTube video or a Facebook channel or Instagram or something like that. And it's going to be a little bit different. What I'm talking about, as opposed to what you might have seen in the past, is where we're actually going to film a house, right? We're going to film the walkthrough when I say this, right? This isn't like taking 15-second videos in each room. No, we're talking about basically, from the front door to the back door, you walk up to the front door, tour from room to room, carrying the camera, and you're actually doing a virtual walkthrough for the camera as your prospect. Hey guys, and welcome to the video talking about how to get more leads. Listen, my name is David Adams, and I'm with Sirus Digital. We do direct digital marketing services for real estate professionals. Now, if you're kind of looking for the video and kind of looking into some of these how to find leads as a real estate professional, you've really kind of in some ways got two challenges, right? You're either trying to attract leads or you're trying to nurture them into some kind of a close. In a lot of ways, you've been involved in what you've probably done either yourself or you've actually hired somebody, content development, building some kind of a website. Maybe you've ran ads, Google, Facebook, YouTube, whatnot. A lot of us, bought leads from some kind of what I call the aggregators. You're talking about Zillow or Realtor.com, and realistically, the results just have not been there, right? And the one thing that I want to share with you here is I'm saying you're not alone. Right? You did some of these things, whether you did it yourself or you hired somebody else to do it, you're not getting the results that you expected out of it. It is a common problem that a lot of people have, and it's one of the things that I hope this video is going to help you out with a little bit today. Now, we're going to jump right into the video in just a second. From a logistical perspective, it's going to be about 45 to 50 minutes long, and then at the end, we're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. For those of you that have questions, definitely make sure you put them in the chat and ask them down below. But we're going to do that, and we're going to walk through that, and we're going to talk about how to create leads and how to nurture them and get more business and get more growth in your practice. Now, if you do need to reach out to me, if you have particular questions external to that, there's going to be web links and email that's going to be included in the video as well as in the description down below, so just check that out. But with that, let's go ahead and jump right into the video now. Yeah, guys, we're going to jump right into it for our session today, and we're going to be talking about 4 social media platforms for real estate professionals. Just a little bit about me. My name is David Adams. I own and manage SirusDigital.com. I've been leading and managing and building software teams for probably about 20 years, producing and publishing content for at least 10 of that, a lot of it on the digital marketing space, which is where I really have a lot of interest, and it's where a lot of the material that we're talking about today actually comes from. Now, we start out a lot in something that I talk about quite a bit is specifically relationships and audiences. And it comes back to a quote that I picked up from a radio show that I did a few months ago that when I was talking to the host, and we were talking about competition amongst competitors and whatnot. My point is that from a competitor's perspective, they can copy a lot of things about us, whether it's our product, our service, our process. The one thing that they really struggle to copy is our relationship to our audience. Now, that is interesting, and I want to kind of break that down a little bit, specifically when we talk about audiences. I think that first side of it's kind of easy. It's people that are viewing and engaging with you and your content. The second part's a little bit more specific, especially as we're talking about social media platforms, and that's on a platform that you control. Now, how it relates to social media and whatnot specific to audiences, I really don't talk about audiences in the context of like friends you might have on Facebook, followers, you might have on Twitter, some other social media platforms, subscribers from a YouTube perspective. And I really don't think about an audience from the leads that we might get from one of the aggregators like a Zillow or Realtor.com. I don't even consider that as an audience because that's not something that we control. That's important because if anybody you out there are right around my age, you remember something called MySpace. And back in a number of years ago, it was a social media platform. People actually built businesses on it the way they do on Facebook today. Now, MySpace was really big then. However, Mark Zuckerberg and some friends at Harvard actually come out with a photo sharing app. They called it Facebook, and kind of the rest is history. Nobody really hears about MySpace today, nor about the businesses that were built on it. And that's the reason that it's very important from the aspect of you're actually building that audience and building those people that engage with your content on a platform that you control. Now, just for being here today, if you'll go to www.sirusdigital.com/real estate, that's HTTPS www.sirusdigital.com/real estate. Just enter your email address. There's actually a social media engagement PDF that I've got for you. I appreciate you guys joining in on the video today. Definitely go in there, enter your email address, get your social media engagement PDF, and check it out. There's some other valuable information that I want to share with you, and just as a kind of a thank you for you joining onto the session today. Now, the platforms specifically that we're going to talk about, I told there were 4 social media platforms. That's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Now, why did we pick these 4? Really, they're 4 of the more important ones, and there's something that a lot of people are working on, a lot of activity, a lot of engagement. Specifically on YouTube, it's actually the #2 search engine in the world. Facebook and Instagram, that's from the perspective of where there's a lot of eyeballs at, right? In the case of Facebook, you're talking about quite over 2.5 billion users with a B. Instagram is right at over 1 billion itself. The only difference being Facebook owns them both. And Facebook is kind of where we're talking about where all the eyeballs are, as opposed to Instagram, where there's just a younger set of eyeballs. But again, you're talking about in the orders of 2.5 to 3 billion users worldwide when you talk about those 2 platforms in themselves. From a LinkedIn perspective, a lot of us knew about LinkedIn when it was online resumes. It's really grown over time to where it's really a social media platform for professionals today. So that's definitely one we're going to talk about. Now, as far as we go back to talking about the MySpace perspective, the reason that I'm kind of talking about these 4 is when you talk about these 4, you're talking about platforms that are associated to Google being YouTube, or Facebook having Facebook and Instagram, or LinkedIn, and it's actually owned by Microsoft. In this case, you're actually talking about 3 of probably the 4 largest companies on the planet that these platforms are associated with. They're probably going to stick around. However, we're just associating where there's a lot of attention and a lot of really deep roots from a business perspective to do it. Now, a lot of people might say, why not pick another platform? A Pinterest or a Twitter or TikTok, whatever. The biggest reason that I want to talk about, that I want to share with that, is there's nothing wrong with those other platforms. If you have an existing engagement group, right? You've actually been working on Twitter, or you've been working on Pinterest or something, use it, right? A lot of the techniques that we're going to talk about today, they're going to work on the other platforms. You may have to adapt them just a little bit for the platform. The platforms are a little unique and a little bit different. But a lot of these same techniques will work if you want to adapt them a little bit onto a platform that you already have an engaged group that you're communicating with. Now, as far as just why not another platform, why not do 5, why not do 6, why not do 7, add them more? The reason that I don't really recommend that is there's actually a learning aspect to any platform that we target, right? How do they work? What kind of content works best? How do the users interact? What kind of content do the users like? In the end, there's a lot of work that goes into the practical effort and the experience of working and building on a platform, and it's a learning aspect. It's a learning curve that we have to hit. And from my perspective, again, the relationships are our objective here, not really learning how the platforms work, because if you remember, at the end of the day, they can copy a lot, right? They can even copy how we might work on a particular platform. The thing they can't copy is the relationship that we build with the audience, and that's just something that we're going to kind of circle back to and talk about as we kind of go through this session. Now, when I talk about content, I talk a lot about it. There's really 3 standpoints where I look at the content. From an industry perspective, I think we do a pretty good job. Most all of us talk a lot about our industry, whether that's houses that might be for sale in our particular area, or what mortgage rates are doing, or which ones are for sale, or what kind of improvements to do on houses. All of those I kind of look at as market type topics. We do a really good job of posting content about that. Where a lot of us struggle is where content that's more associated to location, which might be your local service area, or associations, which might be interest groups that you're a part of or you want to be a part of, that you want to engage with. From my perspective, it's those 2 bottom points of the content, and sort of those different types of content, which a lot of us struggle with, which is going to be a big focus in the session that we're talking about today. Now, before we start with the particular platforms or particular kind of techniques I want to share, I do want to highlight from a video perspective, I'm a big proponent of video. I think it's a wide open opportunity in real estate, actually. You can do more today with your cell phone, the tripod or selfie stick, or a friend that's actually filming you. You can do more with your smartphone today than a lot of production crews could have done 10 or 15 years ago. The benefit that you actually get out of that is both recognition, awareness, and trust, right? And trust is that big one. We've all kind of seen these metrics where, we remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, and over 30% of what we see. Now, in the perspective of a video, which has captions that you can read, audio that you can hear, and then the video is actually a visual element, the kind of benefit that gets us is that over 60% of our attention and trust building that you get with a captioned video that has an audio component to it as well. So that, from my perspective, that's why I really love video. The other part to it is all of the platforms that we're going to talk about today. YouTube, everybody knows about it from a video perspective, but Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, they allow you to publish varying lengths of content as well from your video. So there's nothing that say you can't take a longer video that you might put on YouTube and cut it down into a shorter video and put it on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or something like that. You can actually take the video that you produce and you record from what we're talking about here today and strip just out the audio to make any, audio or a podcast from a post-production standpoint. Or if you're adding captions to your video, you can actually get the captions and publish those as like a blog or a newsletter. There's just lots of different opportunities for that video content that we're going to talk about producing today, that you can reuse them and repurpose them and decompose them in different ways. And we're going to start on YouTube. It's kind of the place where I want to start because it's where the longer form video might sit, and it's a platform that really everybody associates to video itself. Now, specifically about social versus search platforms, a lot of people ask, well, we're starting here, is it a social platform or is it a search platform? My biggest answer to that is it's both, right? Yes, it's a social platform in the case that you're building a following, right? Those are subscribers. So as you get subscribers, they're going to be coming back and checking for your video over time. Also, it's a search platform, right? And that's where, the people that are actually looking for a particular topic or showing an interest in a particular topic can actually go find your video searching for it and actually do it. I mean, specifically, YouTube itself is actually the #2 search engine in the world. It's owned by Google, and the behind-the-scenes power, the algorithm to it, is actually some of the same algorithms that actually run Google itself, which if you think about it from a search engine perspective, all search engines are really ever trying to do is deliver the best answers to user requests. That's why it's so valuable as both a social and a search platform. Now, our first kind of technique that I want to talk about today, and some of you guys have probably heard about it from a digital mayor perspective, and that's just where we're interviewing everyone we meet, right, in our local service area. What we're kind of talking about is, you take a 10 to 15-minute interview with other people that might be in your area of service. When you post it up, the title and the description needs to be connecting who, where, and why, right? Who they are, where this interview was relevant to, and why it's relevant to that area. And as you kind of look at the image that it's portraying, the more of these interviews that you kind of produce and the more interest groups that you're associated to within that local service area, the more attention that it's drawing back to you as the interviewer and the connector for all these people. Now, a few do's and don'ts when we talk about this digital mayor technique. The biggest thing is make sure that the video itself is about them, because realistically, the users are going to come to it. They're looking for that person or that local service area and some person in that local service area. Again, you want to make sure that the prime big parts of your video are about them and their connection to that local service area. The kind of the added point to it, this is the kind of benefit for us, is what I call that 120-second outro that might be at the back of the video, which might be something as simple as you in front of a white screen at the end of the video. This is just a different segment to it that you add in post-production as an outro, saying, hi, I'm Becky and I'm a real estate agent in this particular local service area. I'm really interested in working with people in this area. If you're new to the area or you're looking for a house or whatnot, definitely give me a call, 555-123-1234, or www.callbecky.com, whatever your website might be, and use that little outro as your own advertisement on your video to basically really connect yourself to that video, to that person in that local service area. Now, as far as don'ts, you don't have to worry about making it fancy. It doesn't have to be a great video. It doesn't have to be a great production video. You just want to make it a nice video that does the interview, that communicates what you have. You're not really trying to wow them with your Hollywood-esque skills. What you're trying to do is get the information to them, attract their attention, and share some information with them. You don't have to worry about what you look like, what you sound like, or anything like that. It's really about them and not the video itself. Now, a lot of people might say, well, gee, David, who should I interview? I just added a couple of thoughts here. I took about 5 minutes to come up with this list. Restaurant owners, store owners, nonprofit directors, that's people in my local service area that other people might be interested in. The green that's down in the left, those are all people in your local service area that definitely we should already be having contacts with today, right? Whether it's attorneys, mortgage brokers, home inspectors, builders, all these type people in the real estate market, they're either shoulders or associated with our real estate market that we should be contacting pretty regularly in a way. Definitely get an interview with them. post that interview out with you talking to them. That just builds up your association in that local service area and gets them attention as well. Now, more on the right is more some of your either local school systems or, teachers or principals or whatnot, sheriffs, county commissioners, all kinds of people that are in the local community that are kind of important, that people that might be moving into the community might be interested in hearing from. And like I said, I just got the thing down there to keep thinking. Like I said, this list is like 5 minutes of just noting down some things on a piece of scratch paper. You can probably come up with double this list just thinking about it in your local service area, or start putting some names to some of these people as well. Now, the second kind of technique I want to talk about, and I'll jump into, is what I call the virtual walkthrough. Some of you guys have actually seen this on a YouTube video or a Facebook channel or Instagram or something like that. And it's going to be a little bit different. What I'm talking about, as opposed to what you might have seen in the past, is where we're actually going to film a house, right? We're going to film the walkthrough when I say this, right? This isn't like taking 15-second videos in each room. No, we're talking about basically, from the front door to the back door, you walk up to the front door, tour from room to room, carrying the camera, and you're actually doing a virtual walkthrough for the camera as your prospect. That's really what we're showing here, right? Tours to the room, tour from room to room. Navigating as if you're showing the house, right? Because you're walking from room to room. And then back out the back door to show what it kind of shows in the back, right? If you'll see the picture, there's the 2 little green helicopters on the side as drones, right? This actually works great if you've got a drone yourself, or you've got a friend that has a drone, where you can kind of get that higher view of the house from the front, fly the drone down to the front door, and then you take over and you blend these videos together, the video of you walking through the house, getting to the back door, and then again blend back in the drone video of going out the back door and going into the backyard to show a top view of it, right? That's how you can really create a cool effect to this while sort of showing a walkthrough of the house. Now, some do's and don'ts for this as well. From a do perspective, the house needs to be show ready, right? You want to make sure the house pops and looks great. Recruit a friend, right? You can actually carry the video through the phone through with it and talk to the phone as you're holding it. But now it works really good if you have a friend who's holding the phone, you're giving them the tour, and they just happen to be holding the phone filming you do it. They can largely interact with your motions as you show something. They can look at it, show the camera to it. They can do all of those things, and realistically, it can create a really great effect. Now, a couple of the don'ts that I want to share with you, they're very important. I don't really like the room stop videos, and when I talk about that almost is the collage effect, where somebody will actually go in and film like 10 seconds of a room, and then go to the next room and film like 10 seconds this room, and then 5 seconds in this room and 8 seconds in that room. It just kind of gives this weird teleporting effect across the house. It's almost like just a collage of photos, really. I really am a fan of walking through the house with the phone as the prospect, right? So that the person who's watching the video gets the effect that they're the prospect or they're the phone. The other thing is I would recommend you do it is don't identify the house address. There's really 2 reasons to this. One is there's either somebody that is living there or there's somebody that's going to live there, right? and identifying it by the house address is really not cool, because you don't want somebody to show up to the house thinking it's for sale when it's not, especially if you're the one who sold the house. That's even worse. But the second sort of part to it is we want this particular video to last a long time, right? So we don't want something that once we sell the house, we got to take the video down because it's not for sale anymore. What I usually recommend folks to do is, as opposed to identifying the house address, to actually talk about the type of house, right? You don't have to talk about where specifically the house is. I mean, there's a neighborhood in my area. It's called Fieldstone. And there's like, 800 or 1,000 houses, I think, in it. I can talk about these are the types of houses in the Fieldstone area that I like to sell without identifying specifically which house it is. And I can actually show a couple of houses in that area to where people actually get a pretty good idea of the types of houses that I'm interested in selling without actually having to identify which one specifically that is. Now, the third technique that I want to talk about with you today is what I call the dump to the dream. All of you guys have actually seen this. This would just largely be a time-lapse kind of video of how we might have improved a property, right? Or somebody that improved the property. You're kind of showing the value that's added over time. Most people have always seen this type of video. The hero's journey, the worse it starts, the better it turns out to be. This is almost the flip this house kind of a video, right? It's a shorter video than what an episode of Flip This House might be, but that's sort of what we're actually showing from that aspect. We're showing the value added over time and the way the property was improved, as well as the results. Now, a couple of hints, and I take this hint from what we call the recipe videos, the food porn. Tease the outcome. One of the things, and if you think about it, you've always watched the recipe videos as they get shown, the first thing they do is they don't show the bowl where you start pouring in flour and eggs and sugar and milk. What they show is the coconut cream pie. And the reason that they do that is because they're actually teasing you the outcome to show you why you want to watch this video. If all I did was show the bowl, throw in ingredients, I would have a pretty good idea that you're fixing a dessert, but I wouldn't know which one and wouldn't know if I was interested in it. More than likely, I'm going to have scrolled along before I figured out it's it's a coconut cream pie that's going to be shown, which is my favorite dessert. Again, from the aspect of don't identify the house address for the exact same reasons we talked about earlier. Now, show and tell. The aspects to show and tell that we're talking about here is just as a reminder to ourselves. Over 70% of the videos on YouTube are watched on mobile devices. So that means we're watching on our phone, we're watching on our tablets, whatnot. It's really YouTube for, only about 3 of every 10 videos is watched on a laptop or a desktop or something. We're watching on our devices more than anything else, probably about 70% of the time. Of those that are watched on our devices, those 70% of the videos, over 85% of those videos that are on mobile devices, they're watched with the sound off. Now, it sounds kind of weird to say it that way, but it's not surprising at all because we've all done it. We've been laying in bed early in the morning, late at night, and we're scrolling through watching YouTube videos or Facebook or whatever, and we're scrolling through, but we've got the sound off because we don't want to wake our significant other that might be laying next to us. So we've got the sound off as we're doing it. The word that makes it in where we're highlighting this is make sure you have captions on your videos. They're extremely important. Because what those captions do is they give the opportunity for the user who may not have the benefit of the sound of your video or even hearing the words that are said, they can still follow along and understand what the topic is. The same thing goes for your visuals and actions. The ones that you actually add to your video in that first 3 to 5 seconds are extremely important. They need to clearly communicate what the video is about and who's intended for. Because if you think about it, we've done it too. You scroll through the video in the first 3 or 4 seconds, it looks kind of boring. You don't really know what the videos are. You're going to basically scroll on to the next one. You're not going to stick around long enough to actually get the value from it. Those first visuals and actions are very important when the video starts so that you can clue the people in to why they need to stick around and watch the rest of your video. Now, there's a lot of objections when we talk about video. This is the 2 of the largest ones I usually get. I don't look good and sound good on recordings, or it's a lot of work. From the don't look good or don't sound good, you know what? They're going to meet us eventually. The reality is very few people sell houses today via just email, right? If nothing else, we're going to get on a Zoom session where they're going to hear us and they're going to see us via video. Even if we don't meet face-to-face, we're not going to do it via email. We're not going to do it via the mail 99% of the time. If you can, great for you, but most of us won't. So don't worry about what you look like. Don't matter what you sound like. What you're trying to do is you're just trying to communicate value to people. The lot of work, it kind of is. It can be. However, everything that we're going to talk about today, there's 3 really important things that I'm sharing here. For everything that we're talking about today, they're completely repeatable and trainable, right? Which means that we don't have to do all of it. We might actually record our videos, but have our VA post-produce them, right? Or pull the audio out for them or publish the audio and the video onto YouTube and stuff. A lot of the steps that we're going to talk about today, you can train somebody else to do it. And secondary, and probably more importantly for a lot of us, they're completely free. We're not talking anything today about ads. I'll mention it a little bit toward a couple of the sessions and a couple of the particular techniques, but nothing in here is ad related that's required to spend money on. They're completely free. So that again, it may be a lot of work, but we're just spending our time and effort into it, not really as many dollars. Now, what do you need to actually do what we're talking about today? You do need a smartphone, or something to film the videos on. You need some type of a software to edit the video. From an Android user's perspective, Power Director is a great product. If you look back to my YouTube channel, all of those videos were actually produced on Power Director on my phone. I would actually film and produce the video on my phone and upload it up to YouTube from there too. From an iPhone, same thing applies with iMovie. Is an application that runs on the iPhone, allows you to produce the video on your phone. For those of you who might want to do it more in a desktop standpoint with a few extra features, DaVinci Resolve is a great product. I've just started using it myself, love it. I use it on my Windows machine, but there's versions of it for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So pretty much any kind of a computer that you have, DaVinci Resolve's got a version of it that's going to run on it. All three of the products that I've talked about here are completely free. There'll be links down in the bottom of the video that you can check them out and download them or connect into them on your particular device. Optionally perspective, especially is where we talked about the videos of either the walkthrough or the dump to a dream. A drone's a great optional thing to have. If you don't have one, definitely get a buddy who's got one. Enough people have them nowadays that we can actually get friends that have them and come film with us for 15 or 20 minutes and do every bit of filming that we need to do from a drone and get the content that we need to produce that with. What that actually produces is the YouTube video, and in this case, we've shown an example where we created one of the videos. It really doesn't matter which one of the types, but we've got a bigger video, and then we cut it down into some smaller sections, right? Well, we can do the same thing with our audio. We can have the entire audio that might be a podcast, but have some snippets of the audio that we pull off and separate that out as well. Same way with, images or quotes or stuff like that, we might have the text of the video that comes out as the bigger part to it, but we might have image quotes or something that get pulled off. But what I'm kind of showing here is the capability that we had. We filmed one video and come up with multiple sets of content that can actually come off of that video. Now, we talked about YouTube. We're going to talk about the other three platforms now, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I do want to sort of jump on to a little bit talking about where we post, because really it's about the same thing in all three platforms with a couple of examples. They're very consistent how we're going to do this on the three platforms. And where we're going to kind of post is we're talking about feed, stories, and groups. We're not talking about ads today. We're talking about feed, stories, and groups. The feed is what, if you look at Facebook, that's what you largely see on your phone in the middle, or if you're looking at it on desktop, that's that part in the middle. The stories are always at the top, whether you're on your device or you're on your computer, they're always at the top. And then the groups are either, if you're looking on like a computer, they're at the left, and it's, the groups that you may be members of, or there's a little people symbol up toward the top that you may click that and go over into your group sessions if you're more on a device. But again, those are the three areas that we're going to kind of focus on and talk about today as far as where we post our content on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. From a feed perspective, on most of the platforms, the feed is where you don't get as much organic reach, right? A lot of times, as few as 6% of your followers might actually see your post. Depending on what platform you're talking about, the feed is usually something that is going to stay there for a long time. The feed posts don't go away. However, they do have what we'll call a 5 or 6 hour effective lifespan. What that means is for those of you that have 500 Facebook friends or whatever, for something that you post right now in 5 or 6 hours, there's going to be so many posts atop you that most of your friends probably won't see it. And that's just kind of the way it works out, because it's gotten covered up and nobody in a Facebook session is going to scroll down far enough to get back to it. That's why when I talk about an effective lifespan, the post didn't go away. It's still there. It's still working within the algorithm. However, most of the views and the organic reach that it will have gotten will have been achieved within that 5 or 6 hour effective lifespan. Next, we're going to talk about stories. They're, like I said, they're at the top of the page, which in real estate we know location, location, location. They're up at the top of the feed, or they're up at the top of your page. And they're associated. When you share a story, all your followers actually get the opportunity to see it until it's actually run over to the side. Now, in stories perspective, with a few exceptions, they have a 24-hour lifespan, right? They go away after 24 hours. It's not so much an effective lifespan from those, is that they, for the most part, go away. Groups, we're going to talk quite a bit about groups just because I'm a big fan of them. And I'm a big fan of them because there's opportunities for us to join groups that may be associated either our peers, prospects, or customers. From a peers perspective, that's groups of people who we want to be recognized among. That may be other real estate agents. That could be bankruptcy attorneys. That could be mortgage brokers. That could be anything, right? Those are peers. They're other people that we want to be recognized among because they might be able to send us leads or business, or they might be business partners that we might want to hook up with. From a prospect's perspective, that's the people that we want to be seen by. That's the folks that we want to attract their attention because we want them to become customers in some fashion. And then the customers are people who we already are interacting with on a business perspective that we might want to go deeper with. The good thing about groups is they are actually groups for all kinds of locations, industries, whatnot. And you can basically find peers, prospects, and customers amongst a lot of different areas and within different groups. I mean, there's a number of groups on some of the platforms by faith. If you're really big in your faith, that's that's just another connection point in an association that you can build within groups that you join and interact with. Now we're going to start out with Facebook today, just because it's one of the bigger ones. The organic reach of Facebook is kind of problematic. A lot of people grumble about it. It's challenging. That's the number that's really around 6% when people talk about organic reach being near 6%. When I say that, everybody's going to say, well, that's not true, because I've got this friend that I seem to see everything she puts up. And that's true. And the reason that is because while the average reach is about 6%, there are people who get much better engagement, especially if it's among people who engage with them, right? And that's a function of engagement, because Facebook's algorithm is going to show content to people that is the type of content with which they engage, because Facebook wants people to stay on Facebook, right? They want them to stay on the platform. So if you can produce content that your followers engage with, you're going to beat that 6% average. Now, the flip side to the 6% average is true. If there's people that largely, he posts 6 times a day and I seem to see all 6, that's somebody whose organic reach is way above 6% to people like me. If his organic reach is way above 6% to people like me, then realistically, for other people, their engagement is way below 6%, right? And that's kind of the downside to it. That's why it's really important to make sure your content that you're producing is stuff that people will engage with. They will like, they will watch, they will comment on, they will respond to, they will interact with you on. Engagement is really big, especially when we talk about feed posts. Now, stories, from a Facebook perspective, they allow you to actually put stories up on your thing that exist for about 24 hours. They exist for 24 hours or twice that people have actually viewed them. Now, when we talk about video content, the video segments that you can post on Facebook can be about 20 seconds long. But there's nothing that stops you from putting up a number of 20-second clips. So that's kind of the way you can do this. Is a lot of people will actually show a bunch of different 20-second clips, but there would be nothing that stops you from actually cutting a video that might be 2 minutes long into 20-second segments and posting each of those segments up in succession to actually tell a longer story with it. And in the case of Facebook, those segments can be 20 seconds long when you cut them together. You can put a call to action button or a link, which actually allows you to say, hey, click this button to go see more, to go to another website, to go to YouTube, whatever it is. If you do that, Facebook's going to treat that like an ad. They're going to charge you for it. There's some actually techniques, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a minute, of how you can actually create that effect. But if you use a button or a link to take somebody off of Facebook, you're going to get charged just like an ad. As it relates to groups, my recommendation is actually to join groups that contain peers, prospects, and customers with whom you want to interact. The good thing about groups, and this works on both on Facebook and LinkedIn, where we're talking about groups a lot, all the posted content that members post, all the members see. That's what's kind of the cool part of the groups, and that you can kind of get past that 6% organic reach average. The downside of the groups is that you've got an additional set of curators for groups. Everything on Facebook is curated by Facebook's administrators themselves. However, in the groups, there's actually moderators, and there are people who actually created the group, or they're administrators for the group, and they actually moderate the content that's on it as well. So that's why it's really important when you're participating in groups, you want to provide value. If you're not providing value and all you're doing is just largely spamming what amounts to ads into people's groups, you're going to get out of the group pretty quick. One of the pro tips for groups, and this works on LinkedIn as well, if you see an opportunity where there's a group of peers, prospects, or customers where a group may not exist, definitely create the group. The one cool thing about that is, and why it's a pro tip, is because if you create the group, you're the moderator of the group, and people that kind of raise their hand and wave at you and want to join that group, they're kind of already self-identifying themselves as people who you might want to connect with for that peers, prospects, or customers associations. Next up, we're going to talk about LinkedIn. From a feed perspective, the LinkedIn feed is going to work a whole lot like Facebook does. It's just a little bit more visual ecosystem historically, but functionally, it's going to work in much the same way. The organic reach, the numbers are going to look very similar. They're probably not quite there today, but they're quickly heading in Facebook's direction because that's what Facebook's going to do. They're going to drive that. That's why, again, on Instagram, it's very important to make sure you're producing your content so that it indexes and attracts engagement. That's really what we're looking out for here. On the stories perspective, Instagram was one of the first platforms that actually had the stories. They have segments as well that you can actually do videos. They're up to 15 seconds long. I highlighted that here. Definitely put that in the back of your mind and remember that. We're going to talk about why 15 seconds is important a little bit toward the end. But as far as this goes, just know that the segments that you can put up on Instagram stories for videos is up to 15 seconds in the segments themselves. The same way on stories, they exist for 24 hours on Instagram. However, one thing that is kind of cool on the Instagram platform is there's highlights on your user page of Instagram. So if you go to your user page in Instagram, there's a place where highlights exist that you can actually take your stories and move them into the highlights. So after 24 hours, they can actually exist there. So somebody that actually sees you on Instagram might actually go to your user page, look at your user page, go into your highlights and see stories that you've done in the past. That's the way you can actually get those stories to have a little bit longer than that 24-hour life cycle. Same rules apply from the call to action buttons and links. If you do it, they're going to be treated like an ad. Again, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about how you might accomplish that and work around that. But if you use their buttons and their links to get off the Instagram platform, you're going to get charged as an ad. From a group's perspective, I'm a bigger fan of Instagram using hashtags. The groups, as it relates to Instagram, there's limited to about 15 users. That's really too small of a group to what we want to talk about from a peers, prospects, and customers aspect, with one exception, right? Which is if you're somebody who offers or kind of works with mastermind groups, or you want to create, user groups or groups of your customers that you want to create to interact in a more smaller group setting, groups on Instagram are great for that. They're not as great if you want to create a larger group of people to interact with from a prospect's perspective, just because the numbers are so small, you're going to have so many groups, it's going to be difficult. But if you want to have a subset of people who you go kind of deep with, Instagram groups are awesome for that. From an Instagram perspective, I like hashtags to kind of use a proxy for my groups. And the reason is that on Instagram, they actually did hashtags right. For those of you that kind of remember when Twitter come out with the hashtags, it was like, hey, I went to the ball game today, hashtag mad. That's an emotion. It's not really creating any kind of affiliation or association. It's actually just communicating an emotion. In the hashtags in Instagram's perspective, they actually created them for affiliation. So in this case, if I was to publish a 22-minute video about this section, I might do hashtag, real estate marketing or something like that, because people who follow that hashtag, it works a lot like groups because they'll actually see things that are posted under that hashtag. Hashtags itself on Instagram, you're limited to about 30 on your feed posts and 10 on your stories. From my perspective, I would stick around 5 to 7 at most, because what you want to do is make sure you're focusing more on the content of your posts than the number of hashtags that you're adding on to it. As far as the fourth platform that we're going to jump into, we're going to quickly jump through LinkedIn, which I really like. One of the things about LinkedIn, specifically as it feed, a lot of people actually compare LinkedIn's feed reach today to kind of what pre-2015 Facebook was. For those of you that actually remember pre-2015 Facebook, that's a situation where pretty much anything that you posted could get some engagement, and a lot of people would see it. In that case, LinkedIn's a lot like that still today. And since it is, my recommendation is drop everything you got on LinkedIn, right? If you're creating posts that might go into a feed, it definitely needs to go into LinkedIn as a guaranteed place you need to be putting this, just because of the awesome organic reach potential that it does have. From a stories perspective, they're relatively new on LinkedIn. Again, they last for 24 hours, but the feature has only been available since September of 2020. Not a lot of people are using it, so that's an opportunity that you have to kind of jump into it and be one of the first ones kind of in your area or in your group or in your particular group of associations who puts a lot of content into stories. Might be a good opportunity to jump in and take some of that real estate right now. Again, the segment's up to 20 seconds long. That's a typo here. I'll have to fix that after this video is over at some point, but the segments on LinkedIn can be up to 20 seconds long. Groups, I do highlight this here. It works on Facebook as well, but I sort of always talk about it here in this LinkedIn post, the LinkedIn section. From a groups perspective, make sure on Facebook and LinkedIn that you're not overlooking your local group, local government, local hospitals, or local schools type groups, especially hospitals and schools. And the reason that I kind of take that as a power move and recommend it for folks is there is always new doctors, nurses, and teachers that are moving into areas. Anytime any of those particular individuals and groups actually move into areas, they're actually highlighting and looking to join some of these groups that might be associated with the local hospital or schools. And if you're somebody that's already providing content into that audience, into your local service area, you're going to be somebody that they see really, really quick. From a hashtag perspective, there's actually no limit to hashtags you can put on your posts in LinkedIn. Again, my recommendation is stick to around 5 or 7 of them because we want to make sure we're focusing on the content in our post, not so much on just having bukus and numbers of spammy hashtags everywhere. Now, where's all this going? If you remember earlier, we talked about doing that one video that we may have been able to decompose it into, 5 or 2 or 3 different videos and a couple of other different pieces of audio content and maybe some different word or, verbal or, written content or image type content. Cool thing is now we bring in Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn where we can actually take and put in feed posts and stories and work into groups so that we can take that content that we might have created for that one YouTube video and actually pull snippets of it to go to Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and basically take a lot of those decomposed parts onto some of these other platforms and either drive traffic between the platforms or drive traffic back to YouTube where a longer form of that video may exist, right? We may only show a 2-minute snippet on Facebook or a 2-minute story, on Instagram, or we may only have a audio podcast type post on LinkedIn, but ultimately all of them can post back to the post that's on YouTube, which is the longer form content, so that they're all acting as teasers and trailers back to that YouTube content. And then ultimately the goal is where we talked about getting it off onto a platform we control. Those of you that went to HTTPS www.sirusdigital.com/real estate, you actually saw the image at the bottom left, which is my landing page, right? That's actually how this works. That's where you're using that YouTube channel or maybe even a Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn type link and going to that landing page so you can bring the people that interact with your content off onto that platform more that you control. See, this is just an example of exactly me doing exactly what I say to do. This is actually a case of me doing exactly what I'm recommending for you to do. Now, here's how you want to do it, right? This is kind of the how-to for it, is we produce the video, right? We produce that original video. We might have done the digital mayor. Take and splice that video and create like a 60 to 90 second long teaser, right? That's a second video. It's like 60 to 90 seconds long. It's a teaser. It's a trailer, some part to it, some particular quote from it. And then you're going to basically, post-produce that into a 60 or 90 second segment. And then what you want to do is create a third sequence of, and highlight here, 15-second clips that might compose a complete video or a teaser, right? So you might create 15-second clips that might turn into 60 to 90 seconds. Now, again, notice 15 seconds here. That's what I'm recommending. The reason I'm recommending that is because Instagram supports 15-second clips. Because both Facebook and LinkedIn allow up to 20, a 15-second segment is going to work perfectly on Facebook and LinkedIn, just like it does on Instagram. That way we only have to do the work once. We don't have to keep redoing the work for, trying to do things differently across platforms that might have, slightly different requirements. But again, in this case, we've got the original long form video, a second 60 to 90 second teaser of the video, and a third sequence of clips that might compose a big video. Your original number 1 goes up on YouTube, right? Check out this, whatever the video is about in your particular area. With the description, you want to add particulars about the video, why it's important, what area it relates to, why it's important to people that might want to view it, as well as contact details for you. That might be your website, your landing page, your phone number, whatever it is, however you want them to connect to you. Make sure you add those contact details in that description as well. Okay, video number 2, which was our 60 to 90 second teaser, that goes on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We can be posting that to feeds, different relevant groups, and just make sure you add a link to your original on YouTube saying, hey, if you like this video and like the content of this video, check out the longer form, the whole video that might be up on YouTube. Same thing for number 3, which is your segments. That goes to the Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn stories. And then I talked about a final panel here. That final panel, if you just actually put a stock, black final panel, kind of like what you see on these slides here, with the thing that says, check out this video on my YouTube channel, Swami Dave Says, or go to this website, https www.sirusdigital.com/real estate. If you're doing that, again, as long as you don't make that a link, they're not going to charge you in an ad. But you can, if you have a short enough URL or a particular YouTube channel that you can direct them to, or a phone number that you can direct them to, you can put that final panel on there and tell them what to do, even if you don't give them the link that might accomplish it. And essentially, you're not making that an ad. Or what you may want to do is just put something on that final panel that directs them to add a comment or a direct message to you if they're interested, and how they might be able to contact you in some of those formats as well. Now, if you remember when we saw this picture of a content thirds earlier, we said we did a real good job from a market perspective and an industry perspective. However, we were struggling from a location and associations. We'll look at what we did, right? From a location perspective, we did walkthroughs, we got interviews, some of these how-tos, which might be your dump to a dream. That's more location-related content. And as far as associations do, we added groups and hashtags to get more of our associations. Again, what we're largely doing is building up our content from an organic and an engagement perspective on these platforms. Now, I do want to make a reminder to you here and kind of share this, and this is more making sure that we're understanding how the social platforms think, right? The social media platforms, a lot of us look at it as if YouTube is a show or Facebook is a show, right? It's what we interact with. We kind of treat it like a show. Facebook or YouTube or all these platforms, they don't see themselves as the show. They see themselves as the network. And that is very important to realize that, because if they're the network, it's our content that's the show. And if you think about it, all the shows are always what get put on the network to attract and engage audience. That's our job. That's what we need to be doing. So if we're building our video content or our audio content or our verbal written content, whatever it is, we want to be building that content so that it attracts and engages the audience on the platform so that they get their attention. That's where, and then that's going to make the network show our show more, right? And if you think about it, if you get a show on a network that's being shown a lot, some of the best and most effective marketing that you're ever going to do is placement of your product and service in that show. Now, to kind of, again, I said we weren't going to talk really about ads and things that we may have to pay for, paid traffic and whatnot. But if you once you get really good at this engagement aspect of what you do, and you want to kind of dip your toe in some of the ad world and whatnot, always remember that from a social media perspective, they see the ads as commercials. So again, they're seeing themselves as the network, we're the show, the ads might be the commercials. Here's some assignments I want you to jump off with today. First one I want you to do is I want you to film one video, right? I don't care if it's the digital mayor, the interview, do a virtual tour, dump to a dream. It really doesn't matter to me. I want you to do one video that's going to go onto YouTube. Right, this is your long form video. This is the one you start with. And then clip that video for number 2 and number 3, the 60 to 90 second teaser that we would go onto Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn feeds and groups. And then clip that video. And then, we talked about number 2, which was the 60 to 90 second teaser that goes onto Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, our feeds and our groups. And then the 15-second segments that build a story that go on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn stories. Now, assignment number 2 is I want you to pick one affiliation group on each of the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Instagram is a hashtag, but I want you to pick out one affiliation group on each of the platforms, and I want you to join them or follow them, right? And spend 5 to 10 minutes every day just kind of watching what happens in that group or that hashtag, right? See who's posting in it, what kind of information they're posting, what kind of questions are being asked. And then after that first week of watching, what I want you to do is for the next 6 days is I want you to engage with at least one post every day for the next week, right, on each of the platforms. And then on that last day of the week, what I want you to do is post your 60-second or 90-second, that number 2 video, the highlight. I want you to post that to the group or hashtag. If you've largely been following a group for a week and then you spend a week where you're engaging with people in that particular group, None of the moderators are going to get upset if on the 7th day of the week you post your 60-second highlight into that group as well. On the same radio show where I'd said the idea about our relationship and our audience being more important and it being difficult to copy, I actually made this statement as well, where it's kind of a follow-up to it, which is without a relationship, Amazon and Walmart win. Where I was actually going with this is the person, the interviewer was actually asking me, you know, as far as how important is a relationship, and from my perspective, it is keenly important to what we try to do. When I'm trying to sell stuff, if I'm going to try to focus on convenience, I'm going to lose, because Amazon is going to win that. Amazon's going to win on convenience every day of the week and twice on Sunday. From a Walmart perspective, I can't compete with Walmart on price. They're going to beat me. You know, however, if I want to focus on the relationship that I have with my customers, that is a way that I can actually win in the battle with Amazon and Walmart, at least in my little part of the world, right? The little part of the market that I want to work in. Now, the one thing to always remember about this, and a lot of what we talk about is leads, especially in real estate. This is actually the exact same thing is true. If without a relationship, Zillow and Realtor.com win too. Right, and that's something that I think from a leads perspective that we all need to realize. If we're just gonna try to do business using them as lead generators or doing business like them as lead generators, we're gonna lose because we're playing on their field. We need to pull the game back on our field where we can actually play with a relationship in an area where we can win. Now, parting advice to you, right? The first one is sort of a follow-up to my recommendation earlier. What I want you to do is I want you to develop a virtual audience space, right? That's the platform where you exist as a brand. It's on a platform that you control, right? They're not going to put you in Facebook jail. You're not going to put in Twitter jail on your platform. Once you get the viewers and the audience over onto your platform, you actually control them. You've got that list of names, and that's people who you can interact with and you've got permission to interact with. Over time, once you build that virtual audience space, that becomes a place from where your content flows into where all of your attention filters, right? That's just something that can continually evergreen grow for you with those actual peers, prospects, and customers. A lot of people will have challenges as they're trying to develop content. Most of the ones I ever see when I do strategy sessions for people is really one of two problems. It's either a lack of content is the problems that I see with people and we work with. The second one is if they're creating a lot of content, when you start really honestly looking at the content's all about us and what we want, as opposed to what our audience is intended in, what they're interested in, and what they really want out of it. Thirdly is just something to be a cool social citizen. If you publish content and somebody measurably engages, right? They actually like the video, they comment on the video, whatever it is, respond to them. It's just being cool. You know, and one thing that it does is if you put out your 60 to 90 second video, and you put it up on Facebook and you tell somebody to click here if you want to go check out the longer form video on YouTube, and somebody actually comments and said, hey, I really like this 2-minute video. Do you have anything else like this? If you know 5 or 6 people actually engage with your video and then they see that you're not responding to anybody, it is just acting like a jerk, and realistically they're going to quit responding and engaging too. So that's why it's important, if somebody measurably engages with you, you want to make sure you respond to them because you want to foster that relationship with them. Now, if you look at it and you say, well, gee, David, you know, I'm just too busy, I don't have time to respond, please contact Sirus Digital. Please get in touch with me. There's particular processes and mechanisms that we can work with you and from a strategy perspective, you know, or maybe even do it for you if that's what you need. But we can work with you so that you're not too busy to respond, because realistically, almost none of us are too busy. You know, it's just we're doing other things as opposed to prioritizing doing this here. Now, don't forget, if you got to HTTPS www.sirusdigital.com/real estate. Go out there, make sure you get your social media engagement PDF, enter your email address. I'm really enjoying it, and that's just my thank you for joining in and hanging out on this webinar today. Now, we are going to jump into some questions, and as I look here, I've got 2 or 3 that I'm going to answer. For those of you that are kind of watching this after the fact and are not here with the live session, apologies, but definitely I put my email address here. It's david@sirusdigital.com. That's david@sirusdigital.com. That is the email address that I answer. If you've got a particular question about this topic or other topics that you want to see, definitely reach out to me. Use that email address, and maybe that's something that we can interact on more of a personal basis. Or if there's a particular topic that you'd like a video like this done for, definitely recommend that. I also added down at the bottom HTTPS, reminder again, www.sirusdigital.com/real estate, that address as well. But with that, let me go ahead and jump into the questions that I have so far. Number 1, and I'll go through those right quick for the ones that we've got right now. How many leads can I actually get using these organic social media techniques? That's actually a really good question. It's probably one of the first ones everybody asks when we talk about topics like this. And I give the very generic answer, it depends. It's dependent upon how you actually follow some of these techniques, how many platforms you use, how large your social following is already today, and how active you are and how active the groups are. When we talked about groups and whatnot, especially how strong in an affiliation that you are and you can develop pretty quickly, it actually can tell as to how many leads that you can actually produce with some of these techniques. They are good, right? And the one good thing about it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more from some of the questions I'm seeing here, but one thing to consider about this is organic work that we're doing across a lot of these platforms, which means that the leads that we can build up become a lead source that we can just be enjoying from an evergreen perspective over time. Now, question number 2 that came up is it really possible to develop a flow of leads just using these techniques on these 4 platforms? Again, kind of a nebulous answer to it. I'm going to say yes and no to that. Yes, it is. If all you want to do is develop your leads on these 4 platforms and you have the time and interest to develop and put into it, yes, it will, right? And again, I talked about in the earlier question, this being more of an evergreen type of activity, in that it's something that you build and just keeps producing over time. Right now, it's not something that like a pay-per-click type of situation. And I talked about earlier from Sirus Digital's perspective, we do a number of different techniques. Social media and some of these group techniques is some of the SEO work that we do. Focuses on some of the services that we provide. We usually, when we work with clients, we do a more overall approach across a number of different ideas, but you can actually build a good flow of leads from just working on an organic fashion in these 4 platforms. It just takes some time. One of the things that we do with Sirus Digital is we usually blend a lot of these particular techniques with development, managing your website, working to where your website is actually something that attacks traffic, as well as doing some of that more intent-based search and active advertising, or intent-based advertising where you talk pay-per-click, maybe Google and Bing and even YouTube to some extent, and then or more of a interrupt-based, more like from a Facebook perspective on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. From our perspective, we're doing it as more of a coordinated effort. You can build up good lead flow and good traffic just using organic techniques. It just does take time. And then from number 3's perspective that I got here that somebody had asked, if I only had time to start with one platform, which one would you recommend? I can be a little bit more definitive in this answer, but I'll approach it from 2 different fashions when I say this. If you were to just buy your smartphone today, right, and you said, David, I don't have access to Facebook. I've never had a Facebook account. I've never had a Twitter account. I've never had an Instagram account, LinkedIn account. I've never had any of these social media accounts. I just bought my phone to my computer today. If that's you, I'm going to say start with Facebook, because just the 2.5 billion users that Facebook had, there's lots of eyeballs there, and that's where the biggest audience really is. So I would say start there. Now, for most all of us on the planet, that's not us, right? There are very few of us that would say, David, I just bought my smartphone today or my computer today. Most all of us have Facebook accounts. The vast majority of us probably already have a LinkedIn and Instagram account as well. All of us may not have a YouTube channel or a YouTube account, but we use YouTube. So from that aspect, we either have accounts on all those platforms or, we largely use them in the case of like YouTube. If that was the case, and if you're somebody who has a lot of these accounts or you have one that you focused on more, that's going to be my recommendation to you. So if you're somebody that's just starting out doing this, Facebook's probably the place I would recommend that you start. If you already have a good, solid, engaged following on another platform, even if it's not one of the 4 that we talked about today, if you've got a great Pinterest account, or you've got a big Twitter account that you interact with a lot of people, especially folks that are in some of those the prospects, the peers, prospects, and the customers groups, that you're already interacting with them on that other platform, I would start there. Right. And because realistically, what you're doing is you're actually starting out with a leg up, right? You're already starting out with some history to it and some level of engagement in folks that you've actually been involved with in the past. Well, cool, guys. I think that's the only of the 3 questions that I've got so far. I'm going to drop this slide back up here again. If you do need to get in touch with me, definitely reach out to me at david@sirusdigital.com. Just hit me with the email, whichever one you need to get in touch with me from. With that, guys, you guys have a great evening, and I appreciate it, and take care.